Thursday afternoon, almost 1:15. So just a little bit later. We'll try again to keep this tight. I've said that 2 days in a row, and it's gone quite a bit longer than planned, but in a good way. It means that we're having a nice conversation with friends, people who pop in, mainly people from the um, Burpee Fitness YouTube community, as well as every once in a while we get some people who we don't know, who join in for whatever reason and end up having a great conversation with them. Always enjoyable. So, gotta love when that happens. So, I put in the description, let's just talk. I don't have anything planned. As always, I love talking about meditation. I love talking about yoga, breath work, books, burpees. It's the things of transformation that really interest me. And transformation is um, it's a good word. It's a good phrase because it seems to me transformation happens not on its own. It takes some prompting, but it's a process where change, we set out to change quite often. It doesn't always work. You know, we set out to change every New Year's. We set a resolution. Most resolutions don't come through. Changes take a bit of work. Change takes a bit of daily incremental behavioral changes. Transformation is a result of doing something different, something that we love, something that we're devoted to. Transformation for me happened through my practice of yoga and my practice of meditation, which is why I talk about it so often. I've mentioned quite a bit how I went from drinking to non-drinking in an instant. And to come right out and talk about it, I've always been hesitant, sort of, not embarrassed, but it just doesn't seem to be pertinent to what I love to talk about, which is a transformation. But after a decade or so of drinking, wrecking my car, actually more than once, um, seriously once. The other times were sort of just hitting things, stupid things on my account. Um, I was pulled over by a police officer, an off-duty state trooper, and I got a DWI. Best thing that ever happened to me. Seriously. Because there was, I was a heavy drinker every day, late into the night. Drag myself out of bed the next day to meditate, then to go to the gym. I would struggle to write, skipping it for days on end. Just wasn't inspired, nothing to write about. But I was devoted to going to the gym. I was devoted to meditation. However, I was also devoted to going to bars every single day, every single night, until the bars closed most of the time. This one time, Barefoot Burpees is here. Just a quick hello. Lasagna ready in 5 minutes. Another lasagna day. Sounds good. Enjoy. I am telling the story of my transformation from drinker, bar goer, to a life of sobriety, which to me was absolutely amazing because I didn't set out to quit drinking. And it happened in an instant. I was pulled over by police officers. I left the bar early. Pulled over by an off-duty state trooper. Barely saw me swerve. Just enough. Pulled me over, not even thinking that I had been drinking, but just double checking. Thought it would be a good thing to do. And again, the best thing that ever happened to me. Decade of hard drinking, and in that one instant, I saw the light go on behind me. And I had a thought of clarity that if I never wanted to, I never had a drink, never had to have another drink again. It wasn't, you need to change, you need to do this. It's just a simple, very clear voice that if I wanted to, I could no longer be a drinker. It wasn't a choice. It was just an inclination. Step in this direction, and this is how your life will unfold. Stay the path, you'll get more of the same. I was absolutely blessed by the fact that a destructive decade, I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't hurt myself, and I didn't hurt anyone. It was absolutely an amazing epiphany that I could simply be a not drinker. I went to a few AA meetings afterwards, but mainly to try to replace my social life that I was missing in a bar. And I just quickly realized that it, I didn't need to replace it. I didn't need that type of social life any longer. What I needed was a long, extended period of aloneness, of solitude, of quietness, which is exactly what I got. And my writing exploded, my meditation deepened, life got infinitely better. The instant the siren, the light came on behind me. One of the worst things that ever happened, getting pulled over by a police officer, turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Barefoot Burpee says, my drinking started around 17, fizzled out around 20, then started 22, and then fizzled out again around 24. Then one beer a week for years with a meal, then nothing. It's funny how that works sometimes. It's not even planned, you know? It's not like we say, I'm going to start drinking every day, or I'm going to start drinking a beer every meal. We just find ourselves doing these things. And that's what I mean, that transformation is subtle. We just don't know when it's happening. Versus when we say we're going to change. When I started meditating, transformation was very subtle and started happening from that one moment I sat on the mat, sat on my meditation cushion. However, there was other things. Going to the gym, I knew I was going to make changes. I was going to be a bodybuilder. I was going to be a power lifter. I was going to be an Olympic weightlifter. I was going to be a kettlebell sport athlete. Then I was going to be an ultra runner. So those were the changes. Although it seemed to me that from weightlifting to kettlebell to ultra running was actually sort of part of a transformation. It's a fine line between the two. Barefoot Burpee says it's legal here at 18. These days they check ID, but in the 90s they didn't bother often. Yeah, it used to be 18 here until the 80s, and I missed the cutoff. However, at 17, 16, it was easy to pass, fairly easy to pass for 18, because like you said, people didn't care. You know, if you were going in and spending money in a bar, why would they worry about it? Why would they care? And then at 18, it was fairly easy to pass for 21. Burford says I didn't get ID'd, I think, from 18 to 30. Then I got ID'd a few times buying vodka and beer at 30. Well, look, 25 policy. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it's actually, you know what? Drinking age had no effect on my drinking. Now, I didn't drink a whole lot in my, a little bit at parties. That was the extent of it. I drank at parties. And I didn't go to parties all the time in the 80s. My drinking started fast and heavy in the 90s. And maybe right towards the end of the 80s, 89 or so. And then it kept going all the way to, I believe, right about 98 is when I got pulled over and decided it was time for, wasn't even a decision. Things were just different. I always tell people that, I never stood up on a soapbox and said, my days of drinking are now over. I take a vow of sobriety. I never announced it. When I got pulled over, I instantly became a non-drinker. I don't know why it happened. It was definitely an epiphany where everything that had interested me about bars and drinking before vanished. I had no desire the next day to go out for a drink. I had no desire to go to a bar. Maybe a week or so later, I started wondering, can I hang out with my bar friends, still have fun without drinking? And I went to a bar a few times. I realized that I could go to a bar and not drink. I also realized I had absolutely no desire to do so. No desire to drink, no desire to be in a bar, no desire to be around drinkers. Nothing against drinkers. All of that just left me. Absolutely amazing considering where I was in my life before. And again, um, my creativity soared. My meditation practice deepened. My yoga practice deepened. I definitely, as a drinker, I was in good shape. I was big and I was strong. I could do all kinds of stuff. Um, I actually competed in some judo tournaments. I did one of the very first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments in the DC, Virginia area. I wasn't a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete. I was a judo athlete, but I thought I could do well. Um, and I did okay. Not great, but okay. A better judo player would have done very well, uh, in my opinion. But I got in even better shape when I quit drinking. Just because I had so much more energy. I didn't have to drag myself to the gym with a hangover. I would bound to the gym. Couldn't wait to get in the gym. That, working out with a headache, slightly dehydrated, those days were gone. Now, I don't preach against not drinking. What people do in their lives is entirely up to them. What I do talk about is the ability for transformations to happen, most especially those kind that are epiphanies that you. Barefoot Burpees has to leave. It's lasagna time. Thanks for popping in for a few minutes. I appreciate it. I doubt I'm going to have a long conversation, maybe another 10 minutes or so. And take care. Enjoy your meal. So I'm more interested in talking about transformation, not talking about what not to do, but what you can do. And life has a tendency to transform on its own, transform you, change you on its own. It can be a book. I picked up Born to Run in 2009, and I read, it had a brief opening quote from the Tao Te Ching: "The best runners leave no tracks behind." I was in the midst of studying the Tao Te Ching as well as A Course in Miracles at the time, and I had to get the book. When I picked it up, I would run as part of training for kettlebell sport, but nothing big. 20 minutes after my workout. Do my kettlebell workout. I would do 20 minutes running on the bike paths behind my house. Once a week, I would maybe run for half an hour or 40 minutes. Valerie Fedorenko, the founder of the World Kettlebell Club, American Kettlebell Club, and I was a certified trainer under him, would call it a lung massage. Just go out for a nice, easy, leisurely run. You're not sprinting, road work, what the wrestlers used to do. And I had no interest in doing a race or doing anything long. So, I picked up the book. It looked interesting. I love the indigenous tribes, Mexico and America, Native Americans, Native Mexicans. So it was interesting, but should I buy it? Should I not buy it? It was still in hardcover at the time. And I opened it up and I saw the quote from the Tao, and it's like, gotta buy it. The book transformed my life. Within a chapter, 2 chapters, I was going to be an ultra runner. I didn't decide to be an ultra runner. I was going to be an ultra runner. Again, just like when I quit drinking, it wasn't that announcement, I'm going to be an ultra runner. I just knew I was going to run 100 miles. Now, it took me 7 years before I finally ran 100 miles. There was 3 failed attempts. There was uh, lots of 50Ks. There was a few 50s in there. Um, After my first 100-mile DNF, did not finish race, I started doing 24-hour races, and I loved them. And I had some very successful 24-hour races. It's almost impossible to have an unsuccessful 24-hour race. Stay on your feet for 24 hours, or take a nap and then get back on your feet. But just spend 24 hours moving, resting, eating, moving, resting, eating. My plan was always to stay on my feet the entire 24 hours, to just keep moving no matter what. And that paid off in a lot of ways, especially in crappy weather, where people would, better runners than me, would rightly so want to dry off, want to get some rest, get out of the rain. And for whatever reason, I would just put my head down and keep going through the rain or the snow or the wind. And I did well, placing in top 10 a few times, winning my age groups a few times, placing in the top 5 overall. Again, not because I was any special runner, I was just stubborn. Quality that has paid off in my life, and a quality that has caused me a lot of trouble in my life. So it took me 7 years after reading that book to finally run 100, but I knew without a doubt I was going to run 100. I had a decade or so, a little bit more, I guess, of ultra running. It was with COVID and then my father getting sick that didn't end, put me on sabbatical, is how I like to say it. I'm semi-retired from ultras. I haven't raced since 2019. Wow. So it's been 3, going on 4 years, which might be longer than a sabbatical maybe. I think I might get back into it someday. I was walking this afternoon. I actually went out and I did my little run. I try to keep a streak going. Speaking of Born to Run, the Ted McDonald, Barefoot Ted, on Instagram, had issued a half-mile challenge. He wanted the bare minimum, micro-dosing running. What could that bare minimum be? And he came up with half a mile. And I had been doing quite a bit of walking, race walking, power walking, very fast. My very last ultra that I competed in, I did a 50K, actually turned out to be 36 miles, just shy of 36 miles. So it was a long course. 50K is usually 31 point something. But, they vary. Almost always over 30, sometimes 34, sometimes 36. I did one once that was close to 40 miles. It's still called a 50K. This one was 36 miles, and I power walked it in 7 hours and 14 minutes. And so I was pretty good at walking, and I was pretty good at running, and I was pretty good at mixing them together. But I was doing a brisk walk today, just shy of power walking, and I realized how much I miss doing that for distance. I started thinking about racing again. Although, due to the COVID shutdown and again caring for my father, and then after my father's death, feeling like I needed to retreat a bit from the world, to go back into that same sense of solitude and aloneness that I had when I stopped drinking, just seemed to overcome me again. And it's been 2 years, very quiet. I don't often leave the confines of my neighborhood. I don't know, maybe there's a bit of social anxiety out there, but I just don't feel drawn to step outside that boundary, at least not yet. I feel very attuned to the bike paths in my neighborhood, getting out early in the morning, 4ish, just before 5 or so, and long morning walks before the sun comes up, and then long afternoon walks, longish, with my ex-wife and our dog. Lots of meditation time, lots of yoga time, lots of contemplation time, lots of writing, lots of studying, deepening my knowledge of different aspects of yoga. Like right now, I'm doing some coursework on Ayurvedic yoga psychology, as well as chanting. Just again, ways of deepening my practice, deepening my devotional bhakti yoga to all of its branches. But it did occur to me, it might be time soon, perhaps, to get out and get a race in and maybe be a little more sociable than I have been. I can go days really only talking to 1 or 2 people, and that is mainly out of necessity. There's a lot to be said for taking days of silence, even taking a few hours of silence. And that means even catching the things that you say into yourself. But as that silence lengthens and then deepens, and then we find that we're not even thinking in sentences, in words anymore. We're more thinking in terms of impressions. Interiorly, we just get more and more silent. As Herman Melville said, silence is the only true voice of God. And I have found that to be completely so. The more silent I allow myself to be, the more I seem to hear in those subtle whispers of inspiration, the subtle whispers of the world, of life, trying to communicate with us. And life does communicate with us, always, constantly. We just miss it because we're listening to that voice that we think is us, but it isn't. So, voice of the ego. I don't use the term ego in a derogatory sense, as it's a bad thing that you hear in some spiritual circles. You got to get rid of the ego. The ego is the navigational system, how we go through life, gives us that degree of separation that keeps us safe. We know that physically we're separate from fire, so we don't put our hand in the fire. We know that saber-toothed tigers will eat us, so we have that veil of separation between us and saber-toothed tigers. That's how the ego developed through the ages, where we are now, and it still serves us. But to believe the ego is us, to believe that we are the ego, is where we run into trouble. So we learn to listen to it lightly, to hold its demands and its beliefs and its insistences, all of it's held lightly. Our beliefs, our doubts, our fears, all of that belong to the ego. Not to me, not to the entirety of who I am. So why should I believe it? Why should I believe it, at least without questioning? Everything. Political beliefs. Most of you would guess correctly, my political beliefs tend towards being liberal. Again, correctly. However, they're questioned. They don't hold it just because that's who I was brought up to be. My dad was actually a Republican until he came home from the Navy in World War II. And through going to college, the books that he read, his natural curiosity, he discovered that the views that he held for himself and for society were more liberal based. So he switched parties, started voting as a Democrat. I entertained a lot of different beliefs growing up. My extended family were all Republicans, and having great respect for them, I sort of lean in that direction a bit. However, my own natural inclination, much as my father, leans towards being liberal. There was a brief flirtation with being a libertarian in my 20s. Didn't last long, didn't click with me. If I had to sum up political beliefs, I would open up the Bible to the Beatitudes and Sermon on the Mount. Some biblical historians believing the only true words spoken by Jesus, historically accurate words. Everything else was recorded or remembered later in time by others. And many people feel that if those were the only words that had ever survived in the New Testament, those words alone would be enough to base an entire religion upon. And I agree. I would go, if someone said, why are you a liberal? I would open up the Bible, Sermon on the Mount, and we would begin talking about forgiveness. However, I would also go to yoga, with the 8 limbs of yoga, and why I'm a liberal. You know what? I even dislike saying I am a liberal, because I am not a liberal. My political aptitude, my political opinions tend in that direction. Me, I'm just me. I'm not liberal or conservative. I can't be any of those things. I am beyond a political pool, and so are you. However, we're so connected, we're so attached to those belief systems to the point that we identify with them and we say definitively, I am a Republican, I am a conservative, and you're not. But I did examine my beliefs to make sure that I was voting in a direction that my heart was attuned to. And it turns out, for me at least, that I was, or that I am. So if I turn to yoga, much like I did, speaking of the Bible, Sermon on the Mount, and I would go with the ethical restraints and the 5 niyamas, observances of yoga: ahimsa, nonviolence; satya, truthfulness; asteya, non-stealing; brahmacharya, energetic mindfulness; sexual restraint. Some call it celibacy, but it's not a true practice of celibacy. It's just being mindful of how we spend that sexual energy. Parigara, which is, for one, mispronounced; 2, non-possessiveness, non-greed. The 5 niyamas, which are the observances of yoga, or the observances that yoga would ask us to partake in: satya, which is purity; santosha, which is contentment; tapas, which is discipline, training our senses; savadhyaya, which is, again, probably mispronounced, self-study, inner exploration; and ishvara, pranahana, which is surrender to, we could say surrender to reality, we could surrender to, it's basically implied the Lord, but in this sense, it is the God of reality. It is the Lord of all things. It is just life in its continuous unfoldment without being separate from anything. we unfold to that which is. And in that surrender, we can easily say, I am that, or that I am. So, all those things, when I break them down, steer me in the direction that seems politically liberal. So I go with my heart, I go with my intuition, my instincts, with no regrets. So I'm not sure exactly how we got on politics, how I got on politics, with no prompting from anyone, from drinking to sobriety to going to the gym and ultra running to politics, and then somehow back to yoga. It was a good ride. Let's call it a day on that. I got some things to do. My blog is down, and I have no idea how to fix it, although it is telling me things involving codes, which I have no idea what that means or how to do it. So it is not helpful whatsoever. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to get on the phone with someone who, one, knows much, much more than I do. For two, know that they know much, much more than I do. And for three, seldom ever explain it in a way that I personally find helpful. But maybe I will get lucky and get someone who is infinitely patient with my ignorance of all things technical and guide me through the process, or even better, just fix the damn thing for me. Let's hope, because I have some things to post on my blog already written out. I do the Buy Me Coffee, and I have an account on Medium. And then I have another blog that I write on, and it's all the same thing every day. I put that stuff on, what I write. So my writing is up for the day, but I just missed it on my bigger blog. And the bigger blog is where people can click on Google ads and make me money. Or you can click on the Buy Me Coffee and quite literally buy me coffee. Because if you click on it, I will take that money and go to the supermarket and I will buy organic instant coffee. Someone might say, for someone who's asking us to buy them coffee and you're insisting on organic, that's awful picky of you. The reason why I go with organic, most instant coffee doesn't taste good. Organic instant coffee tastes very good. As a matter of fact, for me, it tastes as good, if not even better, than brewed coffee. Plus, I don't have to mess with anything. I don't have to plug anything in. I put on a pot of water. First, 1 cup a day. Put on a pot of water. The space of time between turning the stove on and the water boiling, I have to do my first round of yoga in the morning, my first session, which is generally a couple rounds of sun salutation and then 3 or 4 poses, 3 or 4 postures to open me up for the day before I have my longer and more involved yoga practice later in the day. So I have a little ritual with instant coffee. Anyway, if you ever see me put the Buy Me Coffee, and if you think, should I buy him coffee? He's just going to waste it on organic instant coffee. Well, yes, but only because it tastes better. If I absolutely had to, I could drink the Rut Gut supermarket instant coffee. If someone buys me coffee on the Buy Me Coffee app and they say, hey, look, don't waste it on organic coffee, I'll honor your request. And I will buy the supermarket not tasting so good coffee. I could probably get used to it. And it's, you know what, it's not really that much different price-wise. So for what it's worth, in my defense of drinking organic instant coffee, it's also better for you because it has less of the additives in. So I take that back. If you're going to insist upon me buying or organic coffee. I know no one's going to do this. I'm just, for whatever reason, I'm extending the conversation. So if you're going to insist on me buying non-organic coffee, instant coffee, well, I will kindly ask you to reconsider buying me coffee in that case, because I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to mislead you. I will continue buying instant coffee because I like the way it tastes and it's better for you. And only have 1 cup a day. If you're only going to have 1 cup a day, make it one that you deeply, deeply enjoy. That's my advice for whatever it's worth. So, all right, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking things out. And I will talk to you tomorrow. And we'll do some burpees in the morning. You guys have a good day.